Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are tonight's entertainment.
Sound good?
Yes, sir! I know who I am!
Did IQs just drop shot?
That could have been.
I have a plan. I like this shit.
You know, it's exciting.
Dance off, bro.
It is your
Me and you.
destiny.
Welcome to the Atlantic Screen Connection Podcast.
Let the games begin.
Hello and welcome to AtlanticSC Next with Jason and Lee. I'm Jason.
I'm Lee.
And as you guys know, AtlanticSC Next is dedicated to discussing what we watched during the weeks off of our main show and bring on a guest to join us in the fun. So joining us this week, we have Chelsea Williford from Chelsea Loves Movies. Say hello to Chelsea.
Hello, everybody.
Hey.
How are you doing, miss?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
That's nobody's business. Well, I'm doing great. I'm on a 3.5 season high from Mad Men. I'm burning through it, and I don't think for myself anymore. I'm just totally trapped in a cycle. But it's a constantly pleasant cycle. So I'm happy, just sort of trapped. That's all.
Oh man, this is gonna be a long fucking episode. Anyway, I'm doing great too. Thank you, Chelsea, for asking. It's been a busy week. I'm still grading papers, but it's boiling down. The semester's finally ending, and I can actually get down to watching movies, reading books, and taking it easy. Maybe playing tennis, going to the gym a little bit more, and obviously I'm going to see Tool this summer with my father,
cool.
the band, and that's going to be great. And I actually bought my tickets to go to the race. Down in Montreal. I'm going to the Formula One race,
Lucky.
which Chelsea is also a fan, and I'm so happy she's on the show because I'll be able to talk F1. It's an all F1 show, so if you guys don't like F1, tune out now.
Yay. Excuse me while I tune out of my own show.
Anyway, but before we get to what did we watch this week, I wanted to ask Chelsea to tell us a little bit about her website, what she does, where we can reach her online, because she's an awesome person I've had the chance to talk to on Twitter and
frequent
also
feature
Yeah.
of Atlantic Screen Connection. I mean, right from our
Absolutely.
Ghostbusters episode was when we first really reached out to Chelsea to get a solid opinion about
That's
a film
right.
that neither of us truly understood. So this goes way back. So we finally there's been plans in motion to have you say something and be heard on the show for a long time now.
But we've been talking with her for so long now that to me it's just natural. I mean,
Yeah.
she's the person that I know now.
Exactly. So yes, Chelsea, go into your site a little and tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, I am Chelsea Williford, like they said. I run the blog Chelsea Loves Movies, where I review movies as a non-pretentious asshole. I say that because, the point of this blog entirely was that I was tired of people being film critics about movies. And I was like, fuck it. I just want to write about movies from the perspective of someone who likes to watch movies. So that's why I have the dumbass title, Chelsea Loves Movies. And I've actually...
That's the point. I mean, no
It is.
dancing
It's
about
great.
it.
It's a perfect title. There's no fat on that title.
Not
It's a
a
perfect
single
title
bit.
for a website.
Every once in a while, I'll dip into the pretentious film critic side just because I've been a film student for a while now. Not officially, but
She means she listens to the show.
every once in a while, I'll start saying shit that I'm like, ugh, I'm such an asshole.
I think it's inevitable. I think once there's this thing you have to constantly fight against yourself to not be that person who can't see movies from any other perspective than a person that has seen all the movies.
Yep.
And as you gradually continue to watch and watch more and more, you lose or have the potential to lose any connection with the common viewer that you were once at some point in your life. So it's good because I never read one of your reviews and think that's a pretentious asshole. But there's always the potential for anybody. I mean, we definitely do it. It's a noble goal for you to set for yourself.
Tell us where you're from.
I am from Georgia. I'm from a little town called Dublin, Georgia.
Very cool.
Like Ireland, Dublin, Ireland?
Just like in Ireland.
Oh, that's super
oh my
cool.
God. Every fucking thing is an Irish theme in this town. I swear to
No way.
Wow.
There is a tire center down the street that their mascot is a leprechaun fighting a tire. Everything.
That's
Everything.
Jesus Christ. That's on the nose.
esoteric,
We
maybe.
We even have like fucking exchange programs with the Ireland.
Oh,
It's insane.
that makes sense. Oh my god, that's brilliant.
Anyway, enough town talk. So where can we find you online, miss?
You can find me online at Jana Williford on Twitter, even though I don't go by Jana Williford, but that's my name on Twitter.
Very cool. That's it. And I'll put a link to her website in the show notes so that you guys can head on over there and talk to Chelsea. But before we actually cut to film quotes read by Tweens, what did you think of the last race, Chelsea? The Formula One race that we talked about a little bit earlier?
I was actually really pleased. I've always liked Valtteri Bottas, so to see him finally win one was like really good for me.
Very cool. Yeah, the race was in Russia for everyone who cares. That one special person out there.
Oh my
loves
god.
interests.
Did you see how fucking uncomfortable they all looked when Vladimir Putin was meeting with them? Holy shit, they...
No, I mean, Jesus Christ, wouldn't you be?
I know, they were all like, oh god, we're about to die. Like, you can see it in their faces. They were like, oh shit.
Just imagine if one person had refused to shake his hand.
Oh my god.
That guy would have never left Sochi.
On the NBC stream, the commentator, when the champagne music started playing before he was off the stage, they were like, the guy was mumbling, "Don't spray Vladimir Putin. Don't spray Vladimir Putin." I was like, you don't have to tell them. They fucking know not to spray Vladimir Putin with champagne.
Yeah, exactly. Nah, it was okay race. There was no overtaking. I didn't particularly have that much fun. And plus, I mean, I have a feed here, which I'm lucky enough to have, but at the same time, TSN, you are fucktards. I want you to fix your goddamn app. And so I try to stream it to my television through my Apple TV, and it's always jittery. So you'll see a car at one point, and then it freezes for half a second, and plus Formula One, half a second is a goddamn lifetime. It's just fucking annoying. But anyway, yeah, I was hoping that Vettel was going to pass him at the end.
I was too, a little bit.
You know, you just want to see an overtake. There were no overtakes in the race, so that was a bit hard with the wider cars this year. So
also, it's been so long since there was like a end of the race overtake too. I think the last one that I remember was at the Montreal race like several years ago when Jenson Button passed Sebastian Vettel at like right at the finish line. I was like, fuck yeah.
Yeah, because I that was the race I didn't go to. And it was the one that was drenched in rain.
Yeah.
And that's it. So this is going to be my 6th time going this year. But we're not going to go in the stands. We actually just bought general admission tickets for the 3 days, which is great. Instead of costing me $575 for a seat, which I normally would pay. Oh my God. Because that's the one thing that I do every year that's my vacation. No, I mean, people say that, but it's for all 3 days. Yeah. You know, a lot of people will go to a hockey game or a football game, and I mean, they're paying $150 a ticket. I get to go see the one thing I like for 3 fucking days, party with some friends.
Fair enough, kind of like a music festival or something.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, yeah, the general mood at the track. There's no fighting. It's not like people yelling in the stands. Like
it's mostly yawns of exhaustion and boredom. I want to bring our listeners back in with some like totally outsider comment, like, "Oh my god, guys, are you hyped for Cars 3?"
I had to sit through in-session film talking about football. They can indulge me talking for 5 minutes with the only person I know online that watches F1. Anyway, so my tickets this year are costing me $65.
Wow.
I'm going to bring my own fucking chair, and it's just because I want to be part of the event. I don't have to have a good vantage point or anything like that. I'm just going to go sit next to a gate, and I'm going to watch these cars zip by. Anyway, so here we go. Because Guardians of the Galaxy have come out this week, I'm going to get my daughters to quote some Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Stay tuned for film quotes read by Tweens.
I'm Mary Poppins, y'all!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Pop Culture Case Study.
Hi, I'm David Hart, host of Pop Culture Case Study, a podcast that analyzes film from a psychological angle. On Thursdays, we take a look at an older movie, pick a theme, and then apply the research that has been in the psychological field to it. Then, on Monday, we tie all of that to a new release. Lastly, there's a section of the show called Fangirl Fixation, dedicated to my wife Britt's ongoing film education. We discuss older films that she's recently seen, as well as the upcoming releases for that week. You can find Pop Culture Case Study on your podcast player of choice, and I will be there, as always, diagnosing your favorites and judging you for what you watch.
Every week on Real Spoilers, what we do is we take that week's big release on the weeks that we guess right, and we spoil it for you. So if you saw a movie and you want to talk about it with your friends, but maybe you don't have any friends, we can be your friends in podcast form. We'll talk about the movie in rich, vibrant detail, and it's kind of like a book club for movies.
Yeah, we're just a bunch of movie nerds.
Yeah, and so it's just a long-form conversation about the movie, going through its plot, talking about what worked, and a lot of times what didn't, and making fun of it when it doesn't work. And if you like the show, feel free to share it on your Facebook, social media, Twitter, verse thing stuff. So that's what we do on Real Spoilers. It's like a book club for movies, only with less Oprah.
And now we get into the segment of the show that is called What Did You Watch This Week? Where we ask the question to our guest, the special Chelsea. Miss, what did you watch this week?
Well, you caught me on a good week this week because I was trying to ignore school stuff. Good
stuff.
I actually only watched 2 new things, and then I watched a shitload of stuff I've seen before.
Yep. Perfect.
I appreciate that. Go ahead. I don't feel bad anymore.
Well, actually, it was my last film review. I watched Gifted, the Chris Evans movie.
Right.
And it was actually a lot better than most people say it was, but that could just be me. I'm a fan of predictable, sentimental movies that are purely designed to make you cry. So it worked for me.
It does seem like a Sunday afternoon, no thrills kind of film.
Yep, and that's exactly what I watched it at. It was like, I was checking to see when it came on during the week, and then I saw that there was a showing starting in an hour, and it was Sunday, and I was like, screw it, I'm going to go see it. And I grabbed my sister and my brother, and we just went and watched it and sat and cried in the back row.
I haven't seen Gifted. I like Chris Evans. I think he's a great...
Chris Evans was actually really good.
But no, I'll check it out eventually. I'm not...
No, nobody's dying to see it.
It's the first kind of film that I'm drawn into. Exactly. It's not the kind of thing that I don't know. Maybe I'll need a good cry or some shit.
We all do.
And then I'll put that on.
I would definitely recommend Gifted as long as you don't go into it expecting like an Oscars film. If you just go into it thinking, yeah, this is like a really, really better version of a Hallmark movie, then you're going to love it.
Perfectly fair. That sounds perfectly fair.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'll call my mom after the show. She'll probably love it.
Probably.
It's the kind of movie that she really
has its
likes.
place.
So that's good.
Never to be dismissed.
Yeah. All right, Chelsea, what else?
Well, I watched Jaws again for like the 40th time because...
Never a bad time to watch Jaws.
That's what the paper I'm supposed to be writing right now is about. I'm making some bullshit up about semiotics in Jaws because I have to, and I don't give a fuck.
That actually sounds interesting, though.
It sounds like the kind of shit
Not
we do
really,
on this
I'm
show.
making everything up.
But that sounds exactly like the shit we do on this show.
Speak for yourself.
I listened to our last episode. You were there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We have to thank everyone for tuning into that. I had fun. And so, do that, Chelsea. Try to make it so obnoxious. That actually sounds good.
I definitely plan to. I have all these, like, essays that are super pretentious that I'm going to, like, draw on. So it's great.
Awesome. That sounds fantastic.
Way to drain the life out of Jaws.
I love that movie.
I love that movie. It's like such a good movie, but the concepts I'm trying to tie it to are just totally shit. Like, there is no connection at all. I'm just going to make it work.
Good.
That's what essay writing is.
Yeah, that's what they make you do.
Yeah, exactly. You see those two things that don't go together? Make them go together. Cool. All right. And what else did you procrastinate with this week, Chelsea?
I watched Desolation of Smaug for the 800th time.
No.
That was fun. Yes.
Desolation. Is that the third Hobbit movie?
Second one.
It's the second one. It's the best of the three.
It is.
Shut up, Lee. I fucking love it.
It's actually the best of the three.
I
agree with her. It is the best of the three because I can't watch the first one. Just never starts, and the third one never ends. So I'm glad there's a middle.
The second one is prolonged limbo, right between,
which is fantastic.
I love the adventure aspect, and in the second one is nothing but adventure. Like, there's never a dull moment to me.
I disagree with that though, but keep going.
I love the Hobbit films. I love Lord of the Rings films.
From Desolation of Smaug, there is that sense of adventure, and it does start out pretty well. But it gets so bogged down in like total meandering crap, and the actual adventure itself, it always felt illogical to me. It took turns that didn't feel like... No, it's the decisions made by the gang don't make sense. That's the kind of annoying shit, you know? They get all the way to the top of the mountain, and then the moon doesn't shine on the cliff face for about 2 seconds, and they go like, our mission was a total failure. And then you're watching Gandalf stuck against a rock somewhere going like, I think the reveal's gonna be Sauron. Maybe.
I don't know. I like that they expanded upon the book, because The Hobbit was the book that I actually liked. I didn't like the Lord of the Rings books. They were fucking boring. But the reason I liked the Lord of the Rings movies is the same reason I liked the expansion of The Hobbit, because it focuses more on the characters, and it's still, adventure, but I like getting to know the characters better as well.
Well, good.
I like editing characters that weren't there. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, how the fuck did you do that? But I love it. Like, Thranduil is my favorite person in Desolation of Smaug, and he was, like, not even named in the books. So that, like, whole expansionary story there just made me happy. Like, my favorite part of that movie is at the very end when you see the dragon like flying off towards Lake Town, and it's just like so like, oh man, fuck, that's cool.
Yeah, that was great.
It's a cool ending.
It's just ruined the fucking opening of the third film when the guy is just looking for a goddamn arrow and you know exactly what's going to happen, and they tried to build tension when I'm like, dude, I remember watching Valkyrie and I know that Tom Cruise is going to fail at killing Hitler. That's a beautiful sentence when you think about it.
Yeah. Whoa.
But I mean, the scene with the briefcase under the table, Singer shoots it so well. It's probably the only movie I actually really like of him. Usual Suspects as well, where he actually knows how to build tension really, really well, and he gets you to start thinking, "Fuck, I think this might succeed." In The Hobbit, at the beginning with the arrow, you know in advance that he's going to actually be able to slay the dragon. So to me, it just goes on way too long. It's just, it never really, I was like, why is this going on? It goes over the point of where you're expecting it to happen into boredom. And so
I never got to see the exciting ending until a year later, because I actually left this film in the cinema. Desolation of Smaug.
Wow.
It's something I can't do anymore, although I wish sometimes. I caught up with the end of Desolation of Smaug, and it is a good ending. That doesn't change the fact that at the 2 hour mark, we've got Gandalf pinned against the wall and saying, it's him, Sauron. I was like, oh my god, this is the most obvious fucking, they've been beating this over the head for an hour. It's like, it's time for me to go home.
Oh my god, I can't believe you walked out of that.
Very few films. That and Pirates of the Caribbean 4 and Australia.
I haven't seen either of them.
No, I recommend you don't.
You know that the only movie I've ever been at that I saw people actually walking out was La La Land, and that kind of sucked because the best part of that movie is the ending. Like, I hated the first third of that movie. I hated it. But then the ending was worth the payoff, and then all these people had walked out before it got to the good part, and I'm like, well, fuck, now you don't even know what you missed.
Well, that's fair. That's weird. They did miss something worth seeing, at least. Whether it made the whole movie worth watching. But cool. Anything else, Chelsea? Any last ones before we move on?
Last night I watched a really good one. On Netflix, I watched this French film called Being 17. That
I heard about that.
It was actually really, it was weird, and there were a lot of things that I think could have been done better, but for some reason I still really liked it. It was kind of like, there were a lot of things that they touched on but didn't explore to the extent they should have, and there were a lot of things that I don't think they earned, but at the same time, it's such an interesting film. That's why there's that, like, movie lovers, like cinephiles, they will love this movie because there's all these interesting, like, they play with jump cuts.
Oh, cool.
And the landscape.
It's got craft in it.
Yeah, I think someone just found this really beautiful town in, like, the mountains of France and was like, fuck it, I'm going to make a movie just so I can shoot here. And it ended up being really good. It was kind of like, they're nothing alike, but my mind connects it kind of with Chungking Express, if you ever seen that one. It doesn't make sense, but I still love it for some reason. That was kind of how this one was. Okay. Like, the story was kind of, they didn't earn what they did, but it was still really good. I definitely recommend it. I'm going to watch it again to see if, like, on second viewing, it makes any more sense, or maybe I hate it. We'll find out.
Cool.
I'll definitely put that down. So Being 17 is going on the list as well. I'll check that out. I'm not a fan of Chunking Express. I tried watching it. I used to own the Criterion Blu-ray, and when I saw it was going for like $100 on eBay, I sold it because I didn't give a shit about having it. And yeah, I know every time I talk to like some cinephiles, they're like, "You got rid of that?" I'm like, "Yeah," and it felt good because I was able to take my family out for a really awesome sushi supper. So excellent. Those all seem like interesting choices, especially Desolation of Smaug. Moving on, Lee.
I agree.
What did you watch this week, sir?
You know what? I watched very little that wasn't Mad Men. And I'm not even
Cool.
I'm not really going to talk about Mad Men because you know what? Either you've watched it and you don't need to hear it, or you haven't watched it and you shouldn't need to hear it until you watch it. So, I'm just going to say that Mad Men has entirely consumed my life,
As it should.
and that I will be done with it in far shorter amount of time than I ever could have predicted. But I'm totally hooked on it. It's easily shaping up to be one of my favorite shows. And I never really considered the idea of favorite shows, but I think it's something that they play around with the gears in your head a little, and they make you think about who you are a lot more, and what you could be, or what you should avoid being, which is mostly the case in Mad Men. I'm constantly absorbing these characters, and that's going to end up changing me a little. And that's how I kind of know that it's a good show, because I'm giving it the time of day to fucking do its work. But adoring it. And I'll leave it at that.
I really need to check that one out because I'm sure I would like it. I just never, like, I'm several seasons behind on shit that I know I love.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to get into new shows just because I know in the back of my mind, look, you still haven't watched, like, I still haven't watched past season 1 of Peaky Blinders, and that was one of the best things I've ever seen in my life.
Oh,
so, like,
man.
I struggle to get into new things, but I mean, Mad Men's AMC. Pretty much anything on AMC is quality.
Sure.
So I know I should like it.
Yeah, I totally understand. I usually avoid doing TV shows. I'd almost certainly avoid recommendations of TV shows because I'm so picky about what I dedicate that amount of time to. And like you, I have 1,000,001 things I know I need to be going through. This was just one of those ones that I had heard so many times and it just ended up happening. And I'm glad we got there, but... And you will definitely love it when you get there, but it's not going anywhere. So finish Peaky Blinders.
Yeah, I watch a shitload of TV already, so
yeah,
I'm always behind.
See, I don't, so I'm very choosy about what I watch next on TV because it's so consuming. So yeah, the only film that I really wanted to talk about was The Promised. I seen it at a press screening with Aisling from Big Picture Reviews. So it was weird. The press screening itself was very strange because it was clearly organized. Like I got my invitation from E1, the producers, the distributors of the film, I think.
Nice.
But the actual people that were there, it seemed to have been organized by like a Christian international like conglomerate of some description or welfare thing, and
That's so cool.
The screen was packed out. There was like maybe 2 other critics, and everything else, everyone else was like a churchgoer or somebody on the board of this.
Was there for the punch at the end of the fucking screening. There's a ritual suicide shit going on, man.
Yeah, so it was bizarre when they started flooding in. They were kind of there, they had their drinks in hand and their popcorn, and they were talking over the film and stuff because they all knew each other. It was adorable. But we also got little booklets, and it said like church statement on it, and there was like prayers there was prayers inside in the booklet.
Oh, no.
I was not the person they were aiming me to be. I am not that guy that they wanted to be at that screening.
Oh man, that's brilliant.
But what an experience. So fucking weird. Anyway, directed by Terry George, the screenwriter on In the Name of the Father and The Boxer, and I think he was director of Hotel Rwanda. He's from Ireland, although I think he's also from Northern Ireland, so he's definitely from here somewhere. And it starred Oscar Isaac, Christian Bale, and Charlotte Le Bon. Yeah, so it was like it's a 2.5-hour film. It was about this guy who gets a dowry from agreeing to marry a woman in his town, and he uses that dowry to go and educate himself to be a doctor. And when he goes to Constantinople to be a doctor, and he lives with some family there, and he's studying, that's just as the sort of first waves of the Armenian genocide start to take part. And it's in these parts of the film, it's pretty gripping, where it's kind of showing the inside of what it was like to be there at that time. There's some really very frightening scenes as it breaks down that stuff. The thing is, the film structures much heavier around a romance, a sort of three-way romance between those three actors I named. Where Oscar Isaac falls for Charlotte Le Bon's character, but Charlotte Le Bon is in a relationship with American journalist Christian Bale, and there's sort of a will they won't they get together thing, but he has made the promise to marry this woman back in his town, so he, even though he sleeps with her anyway, it's the romance is terrible, and I mean terrible in that it is dull and very predictable, and I think the thing that it's kind of like a bad version of Titanic. And I mean that in that that's under the assumption that people generally assume Titanic to be a good example of Titanic.
Yeah, of course.
So, I mean, it was an exhausting movie. 2.5 hours long. Not a very good romance, not a very interesting character, and this important background that was being overshadowed. It was incredible, and it reminded me a lot of like the critical fictions. Is something I've talked about before, where like it's a film in which we use a very contemporary and accessible medium to explore not very contemporary ideas, and I think the Armenian genocide is one that's very interesting to focus on because not a lot of people know what that is. And so the idea is you put that in a film that is and you know your mother can watch and your sister can go and all have a day out and watch the Armenian genocide, unbeknowing, you know, and good ideas like that, you know. Sutropolis is maybe an on-the-nose version of that, where you use a kids' movie to look at racial bias, or Moana's a maybe less obvious one, in that you use this sort of kids' movie to look at, or understanding to what extent conservative values are useful in societal progress. At least that's what I got from the film. Those are the kind of good examples. Bad example is when you have a film where the romance doesn't feel earned, interesting, constantly on and off, and the screenplay seems to want to continually relegate it to the background, but it never quite gets out of the way. And it has to be good for this to work out. It has to be good for critical fictions to be accessible, because you have to at least have standard or template to make people give a shit about what you're actually learning in the background. And it doesn't hit that mark. It doesn't quite catch there. So then, if it's a standard story told poorly and a critical fiction that's distracted in its telling, then you have a story that almost entirely fails. And that's kind of my end opinion on The Promise. It was a story that 2.5 hours in, I couldn't wait to leave. So, wow. And that's really unfortunate, because there was potential there, and I felt pretty heavily squandered.
It sounds like Titanic to me, because like my problem with Titanic was always I wanted to know about the Titanic. I didn't give a shit about the love story. Like, that's the reason I hate Titanic, because like there's this fascinating event that's like a big part of history, and then like that's the backdrop to this shitty romance, and that's kind of what it sounds like you're describing.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of that template, but I like the romance in Titanic a little. It's told well, you know, so that's why people are interested in the backstory. An important historical event hidden under romance, that's a good critical fiction, because people are absorbed by the romance enough. Maybe not yourself, but most people kind of grip by it, and then they learn a little about the Titanic. That's not going to happen for The Promise.
I don't know. I mean, Titanic for me has always been a movie about something that just wasn't meant to be. Mm-hmm. You know, the boat acting as a metaphor for their relationship as much as their relationship acting as a metaphor for the boat. You know, where you're like, I mean, the boat on the water wasn't meant to make it to the other place, just the same way as that their relationship is going to be broken as well. It wasn't meant to be because of class division and whatnot. So, but
class division is a good one to bring up as well, because that's definitely another important thing Titanic gets across really well through the romance. So it's perfectly kind of balanced that way. You know, you learn something about class divide in that era.
That was like the one thing about Titanic I really did enjoy. I liked the way they handled the class division thing. I just didn't really buy the romance. Like, I don't know. I guess I'm just looking at it differently. I just didn't buy the way the relationship was built, I guess.
Because you were looking at the class divide and saying, this would never happen.
It didn't, I don't know. Maybe I just didn't like the way it was written or something.
Oh, I mean, it's very black and white. I mean, that's James Cameron for you. I mean, we talked about it when we were talking about Terminator 2, remember, Lee? And, you know, it's just these very, very simple structures that he uses. But it sounds to me like the promise. Yeah, exactly. It sounds to me like the promise bit off a little bit more than they could chew, the way that you're explaining it.
Absolutely. Anyway, that's my film for the week, Jason. If you want to take us somewhere.
I went on a binge actually this week with my daughters, and I went on a Jim Gaffigan binge, and I went on a Tom Cruise binge. Which is a very strange mix because you have a really out of shape guy and a very in shape guy. And so my eldest daughter is getting to the age where she can actually start watching comedy shows. And the reason I just tested it because my daughters had been watching Moana, which I've been put through, and kind of like it. I kind of don't like it as well. The songs are catchy as hell, and I think that's where I have trouble with it because it got to the point where I went to bed at night and I could no longer not have You're Welcome or the other fucking song she sings. And now I'm talking about it and I can still, there's an echo in the back of my head.
They never leave.
I was just getting angry because here I was in the car driving to work listening to Meshuggah, just like pummeling my head with the best heavy metal I could find just so I could get the fucking Moana songs out of my head.
Yeah, you definitely need a cleanser therapy.
Yeah, it was just weird. And so at one point, we were sitting down for supper, and sometimes, you know, when the kids come back from their mother's place, you know, I go pick them up at school, and it's usually Friday night. It's going to be our movie night, and we'll sit down and make nachos, and we'll sit down at the TV and watch something together, which is always fun. You know, and we'd done it in the past with Rogue One and Force Awakens whenever it came out on home video. But this week happened to be Moana, and this was like the 5th time that they watched it, and I just wanted to kill everyone at the end of it. Not my family, but I mean everyone on screen. I know they're fictional characters. Don't send the police. And so at one point, I just couldn't take it anymore. We were watching Moana again, and I said to them, "Listen, girls, I love you very much, but I am on the cusp of hating this fucking movie." And I don't want to hate it because I think it's a really fun movie. Although I think people made a big deal out of it, and it's not that great. But it's fun. It's a fun movie. I like The Rock's. I don't know how he got his charisma to shine through that character, but you're like, how the fuck does he do it? He's great. And so I basically turned it off, and I looked to Leslie and I said, "What do you want to watch?" And she said, "Can't we find a comedy show that's acceptable for them?" And I was going through all my stuff, and I was like, "Oh, Jim Gaffigan. I think they'd like that." And so what I put on is Cinco, his latest comedy special. And my youngest daughter, who's 9, didn't get much of the jokes. She was just sitting there, Dad, can we put on Rogue One? And I was like, as much as I know you're playing to my sentimentality, you're not going to win this round, baby, because I can see that your sister is really enjoying this. And it was really a weird moment for me because I was happy she was enjoying it. But then the father in me was like, oh my God, she's growing up and I'm getting old, and I hated it. But it was fun because we could actually sit there and we went through 3 shows that night of Jim Gaffigan's. We went through Cinco, Obsessed, and Mr. Universe, and the following night we watched King Baby. So we went through 4 of his comedy specials that are available on Netflix. I also have Beyond the Pale here on DVD that we actually might watch this week as well. Cool. And so when they were off to bed, I was still in a comedy mood, and so I decided to put on Trevor Noah's Afraid of the Dark, and I really liked that comedy special too. I had seen one of Trevor Noah's older specials, and I wasn't particularly a fan, but his most recent one, is really good. His observations are fucking amazing. So if you guys want to have some good laughs, revisit old Jim Gaffigan stand-up comedy and give Trevor Noah's a watch for Afraid of the Dark. Everything's available on Netflix right now. And I was gearing up. You guys won't hear the episode for a while, but Mike Dennison from War Machine vs. Warhorse, I had no idea he had another show called Original Remake. And so
I follow them. I didn't know he did it.
it's him. It's him and Peter from Podstalgic, I think that it's called.
Right.
And the funny thing is that Mike knows that I like Tom Cruise. I've always loved Tom Cruise very much because whatever the fuck part he's playing in a movie, he always gives 110%. And if he could give 120, he would do it.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think at this point, if we can't say a bad word about Jack Reacher, and Jack Reacher 2, and we utterly praise Magnolia, then we pretty much hit both ends of the spectrum as far as Tom Cruise is concerned.
Exactly. And I mean, it's a wide range, but at the same time, it's a range that I find acceptable. And I find that he is an example for all those Hollywood pricks out there that phone in performances regularly. It's fucking annoying to see Jennifer Lawrence in an X-Men film where you're like, it
could be Tom Cruise.
It could be Tom Cruise playing Mystique. Fucking hell, man. It'd be so awesome to see that.
I'm gonna bum you guys out a lot. I've seen like 3 Tom Cruise movies ever.
That's not bumming me out. That's okay. That's perfectly fine.
It is surprising though. He's very accessible.
Yep.
I just
very much.
I've seen 2 of the Mission Impossible movies, the most recent ones, and then I saw Top Gun and Tropic Thunder, and I think that's War of the Worlds. That's it.
That is it.
That's good. That's a pretty good range.
That is a range. Definitely a range.
Pretty good range.
Oh wait, I forgot. He's in Interview with the Vampire. I saw that too. He's really
wow.
Yes.
I totally forget that's him.
That's a good thing. And that's it. So I had to revisit Top Gun and Days of Thunder. The theme of the episode was going to be Tom Cruise's Need for Speed. And it was really, really fun. So I had to sit down and watch Top Gun and Days of Thunder. And I had fun watching both of them. It's not movies that I have a special affection, like you'll hear on that episode if you listen to it, for Top Gun because of my father. Days of Thunder is I've seen the movie twice now. I might watch it again before I die.
I've seen Days of Thunder.
But I don't know. But I'm just saying maybe not, So anyway, and so I decided to put my kids through Collateral, and much to David's and Mike's, they were telling me like, what the fuck, why are you putting your 11-year-old and your 9-year-old through that? And I was like, because it's fine, it's not a big deal, there's no
to teach them a little bit about Tom Cruise's range.
Exactly, yeah.
I remember my dad fucking selling this film to me. It's like, you've seen Tom Cruise. He obviously he's a fan of Tom Cruise. Like, well, you've seen Tom Cruise, but have you seen evil Tom Cruise?
Exactly.
I have
that
not.
That was the selling point, man. The other thing is that Leslie is not particularly a fan of Tom Cruise. So I put on Rogue Nation, and Leslie really enjoyed it. And she was like, okay, I kind of see what you're talking about in terms of what he does. I says all the stunts that he pulls off. And then we actually sat down and watched Mission Impossible 3. And she was like, well, this is actually really good too. I had a fun time watching this film. And she says, what other Mission Impossibles are there? I said, well, if that's 3 and the other one's 5, you're missing 3. And so I put on Ghost Protocol for her. She really enjoyed that. And I said, we're not going to watch the John Woo one, number 2, fuck that. And so she still has to watch the original 1996 Mission Impossible. So I put myself through those, which I love them. I love those movies. Don't watch number 2. It's really bad. I don't like it. Even how campy it can be.
I think a lot of people will probably not care too much anymore for the first one as well. It's very trial and error. It had a lot to do with the original show it was based on, and
I mean, but
I rewatched it lately. It's good. It's just.
Yeah.
It doesn't flow like you think it does.
No, I know, but that's what I thought was cool, because coming out in the 90s, this one wanted to have more of a spy thriller vibe to it, as opposed to an action film that they are now. Because, I mean, look at James Bond was waning at this period, and they were like, this is our time to capitalize. We could become the next spy franchise.
And they were right.
Exactly. And so now it's gone in a different direction, because that's the way movies are right now. But I mean, they're not doing a bad job. Anyway, being on the whole Tom Cruise thing brought me to exactly what Chelsea mentioned earlier. I sat down and watched Tropic Thunder.
I fucking love that movie.
I love that movie too. It's so much fucking fun. I just love it.
It's still one that I've never seen. I've seen some of his bits in it, but I've never. It was so big too when I was a teenager and it came out. Everybody's seen it. You know, it was like the most talked about film at the fucking schoolyard that year. But like, I still have to get around to it.
Oh, it's great, man. I mean, I still remember when I was working at HMV, and I tweeted this out just before I actually started watching. When they had these fake trailers at the beginning of Tropic Thunder that are really funny. And I remember working at HMV, and Tropic Thunder had just come out, and there's this lady that had probably bought it on DVD, and she came to talk to me at the cash and asked me, do you have, and this is in French, mind you, so she had no idea what the fuck she was asking. So the name was all fucked up and the title of the film was all fucked up. And that's what I had to do, is find what the hell she was talking about. And so she comes up to me and she asks me, do you have Jeff Portneuf's The Patties? And I was like, Jeff Portneuf, The Patties. I was like, is that a Quebec film? And she says, no, it's there's a trailer that's playing in front of a movie with this other guy in it. And she couldn't name the other fucking guy. And this is fucking typical HMV shit. You know, if they're not singing a song, they're describing an actor they don't know. And so eventually it started dawning on me that she was talking about Jeff Portnoy and she was looking for the Fatties Part 2. Fart 2, I should say. And I was shocked. I was shocked because I said to her, you didn't understand that this was a fake trailer for a movie that doesn't exist with the dude that's in the film? And she was like, she says, no. She says, I thought the movie looked good. And I says, they're sitting around a table farting. What do you mean the movie looked good? That's all it was. And I mean, her husband was standing next to her. The husband was standing next to her, and I could see him contemplating divorce just a little bit.
I'm surprised he wasn't like,
And it's
get
just
this for me, wife, please.
Fucking thing where I had to take a minute. I went to see my boss, and I was like, you mind if I sit down for a second? I think I just met the most retarded person on the planet. Asking me for a fucking fake trailer from a fake actor. She couldn't tell it was Jack Black either. That's the fucked up part. And I was like, didn't you notice that that's Jack Black? That's not Jeff Portnoy. What are you talking about? This made no sense to me.
The trailer, the other trailer, the Satan's Alley trailer, that ruined Silence for me. Like, every time I saw someone talking about Silence, all I pictured was the fake trailer for Satan's Alley at the beginning of Tropic Thunder.
I just love the title of that film and what it says. It's so weird. That's so like on the nose. It's like no sodomy. You're like, oh, that's all it is. That's all it is no sodomy. Anyway, which leads me to the last thing I watched. So obviously I recommend all of the Tom Cruise stuff that I said, the Trevor Noah show and the Jim Gaffigan show. But I want to talk to Lee a little bit. I know that Chelsea, I don't want to ruin anything for you. So I watched the OA, the Brit Marling, Zal Batmanli,
which I recommended in the previous Next episode.
Exactly. So after like listening to you
do what I do not do and take TV recommendations.
But I mean, you know, I was sold. Jason Isaacs is there, Britt Marling is there as well. I thought that was great. I'm a little on the fence about the show. I really appreciate how it's done. I like the cinematography is fucking brilliant. The one thing that I'm a little bit hesitant about is the overall message. I understand the storytelling aspect and how it is important in order to get people to act and react to specific situation, and how stories give strength to individuals over time if you let it kind of if you just take it inside you and let it work its magic. However, I would say that this is a Lady in the Water done well, if you will.
Right.
And
sure.
I'm a little bit torn because as much as there was that M. Night Shyamalan twist at the end of the OA, I was expecting it, and I was hoping he didn't go in the direction that he did.
I totally appreciate that, and I did have misgivings about it too. I think the issue when these shows all come out and then they stop and we don't get something for another year is that that's not the mode they're supposed to be viewed in. They're a continuous story, but I totally get where you're frustrated. And I was frustrated too, because I was actually relieved that it ended the way it did, but at the same time, it was building a lot of red herrings I wasn't appreciating. And I was actually thankful that it did the smart thing and sort of redeemed itself just by the very end. But at the same time, I get what you mean. It was I felt it was predictable. I mean, I've asked others, and they didn't think it was predictable at all.
Okay.
But I think I side more with you in that it definitely could have gone either way, and I am definitely a little more on the it does, for me, depend a lot on where it goes next. But I still feel it was a wonderfully tight package that you could take and leave as is. It's not perfect, but had I watched it as a teenager, I would be obsessed with it. You know, I'd be always trying to think about what happens, what does it mean, what happens next. I think at the age I am, it doesn't have the sheer obsession impact it could have had.
Right.
But it reminds me a lot of like stories like the His Dark Materials books. Things that I did genuinely when I read as a teenager, I just totally absorbed in. And I don't even think they're perfect books. I just think that they were important to me when I was growing up. And I think the OA has the potential to be like that for somebody. Lots of interesting conventions told well in a very open-ended sort of structure.
Right.
I think that's something to always promote.
Oh, I get it. You said there were red herrings all over the place. I even like the first show when you see Steve having sex. I was like, is this going to lead to anything? And I was like, oh, fuck, they didn't put that in just for a hook, did they? Were you going to see tits in the first episode like they did with Game of Thrones, and then they just, nope, no more tits for the rest of the season. And I was just kind of like, I didn't need that. I didn't need that as a character motivation. He busts the wall.
I get that.
So there were things that were thrown in that I thought didn't serve the narrative the way it should have. You know, and so now I'm hoping that you're right in saying that some of these threads are going to be tied together, because I enjoyed Jason Isaac's character. However,
loved him.
If the OA is telling this story, how the fuck does she have his point of view? There's a specific scene where he goes to a morgue and she's not there. How the fuck does she know that? And so to me, that is going to be a loose end of that if they don't tie up, it's going to weigh heavy on me.
I agree. I picked up on that too. There's lots of theories and speculation online, but I have a lot of ideas about what his character really is, and it's very interesting to even speculate. And not even that side of the show is hard to do. So I think it needs credit there, you know.
I get it.
But you're totally being fair and reasonable, and it's a very rational way of looking at it.
The thing is that I can recommend this to specific people. I cannot recommend it to. Again, I like using my parents as a gauge. This is not the kind of thing that I could show my mom. My dad might be able to get invested in it a little bit more. My girlfriend loved it. She loved it. However, the ending, it fucked with her too. I'm positive, like you said, there's multiple layers, so that if I sit through it a second time, I'll pick up on shit I hadn't seen before. The same way as when you're reading a book. You know, when you're reading a book, you'll be able to go through it one pass and you're like, oh, that's really interesting. And then you'll be able to go through it a second time. You're like, oh, motherfucker, I didn't know that you had planted the seed here. You know, so this is kind of interesting. It might be good to go back and rewatch it. But initial reaction is I'm reserved. I enjoyed it for what it was, but I'm not 100% sold on it yet.
Perfectly fair.
So that was me for this week. I have a bunch of other shit I could talk about, but that's enough. Shall we close this out?
Sounds good, man.
Yep.
All right. Chelsea, I want to thank you so much for coming on to
Thank you for
this
being on the
episode
show.
of AtlanticSC Next. and we're going to have Chelsea again. You
Absolutely.
are one of my favorite people online. And if I could give you a giant fucking hug, I would.
Aw, thank you.
You are a total enigma, too. I share almost none of your opinions. It's incredible.
I wanna just give a quick shout out to everyone that's tuned into our Fate of the Furious episode. This was a shock to Lee and I that it was so well received, because when we sat down to record it, we were thinking of ourselves, selfish bastards that we are. We were like, you know what? We know that everyone's going to say that this is a terrible film. Why don't we try to make it interesting for us? Like I said on the show, and I never thought that people would actually tune in to an episode this fucking weird. I mean, I want to say thank you. Chelsea was one of them. I have her quote right here. If I die because I laughed my way into crashing my car, blame AtlanticSC. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into that show. It's
ridiculous.
After our Miracle on 34th Street, it's my favorite episode. I love
It's always the ones that are out of character.
Exactly.
Or
Cool.
more importantly, in character and like just being ourselves. Those are always the ones that we're like, nobody will love this. It's ours.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
ours.
weird
It's
that this
us.
one's done so well, so thank you.
So Chelsea, thanks again for coming on the show. Where can we reach you online, dear miss?
You can find me at Jana Williford on Twitter, and make sure to check out my website, Chelsea Loves Movies.
Yes, please go over there. Like I said, I'm going to put it in the show notes. We're going to have Chelsea on again, and go interact with her, please. She is fucking a darling. Fantastic person to interact with on Twitter. Lee, where can we find you, sir?
You can find me at Big Pick Reviews on Twitter, and you can read my reviews at www.bigpicturereviews.co.uk. Me and a collective of people all giving our various opinions on the latest films that are coming out. So if you can't get enough of me yabbering on, that's the medium. That's the way to do it.
My name is Jason Michael. You can find me at AtlanticSC on Twitter. Again, I'm still working on shit. That's a lie. I haven't written anything yet. And I'm just working on the end of my semester. So Thank you again for tuning in to the AtlanticSC Next. That's it for us this week. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.